Now, the warning signs are everywhere. There are so many clues about what's about to happen that you would have to be among the most insipid of NPCs not to realize what is going on. This is probably going to be my most frenetic, overconfident, careless prediction video that I've ever made, but everything just kind of fell into alignment for me today, and I'm here to share my meta-analysis of what's about to happen in the Middle East. Understand that what is happening right now in the Middle East is the culmination of decades of historical tensions that are now arising to the surface to fight the final battle. This is it. And it was all brought out by that festering wound of a Russia invading Ukraine and the divide between East and West and the decoupling. That's what's bringing this out. And it has to end in chaos. Unfortunately, there is no peaceful resolution to this. If you want to take the analogy of a two-state solution, okay, because a two-state solution in Palestine and Israel would effectively you could extrapolate that to the rest of the Middle East, that same model, and then it should work. It's never going to work. You're never going to have a two-state solution. Even if you had one, those two countries would eventually go to war, probably within a few months, much less a few years. Now, get a load of this, okay? We got to talk about what is about to go down. I want you to hold this image in your mind. This is Saudi Aramco burning just a couple years ago when the Yemenis and the Houthis, I should say, lit it on fire. Understand that what is happening in the Middle East, it's all about oil, it's all about money. There's no good guys or bad guys, there's gangsters on all sides. So this tribalistic bullshit, keep it to yourself. If you want to cheer for your home team, that's fine. That's not the game that I play because I'm trying to view this as objectively as possible and not get caught up in the whirlwind of propaganda that's out there. Now, guys, take a look at this guy. Isn't that an approachable mug? Yes, that's what humanitarian looks like, according to the U.S. media. Okay, so this guy's name is Yoav Gallant. He's the defense minister of Israel. He said today, and I'm just saying this first so it sets the tone, because he's telling you what's about to happen. Anytime a military general, or in his case, a defense minister, the top guy says something like this, you know that there's going to be a hardcore pivot or a major decision that's about to be made. The pressures on us will increase. We may soon be forced to make difficult decisions. For me, fighting cannot be stopped until its achievements are reached. No going back, no stopping, just going forward. He said that we may soon be forced to make difficult decisions. What do you think he means by that? Well, while we let that fester, let's just talk about some of the other data points that are coming out, because the conveyor belt of information is so fast right now that people forget what happened just a few days ago, okay? Much less weeks and months ago. And the stuff that happened weeks and months ago was what really is forming the basis for what is going on right now. Many people are assuaged by the relative calm in the markets and the oil pullback. No. All smoke and mirrors. I personally believe, and this is just a personal opinion, that oil is going to rebound viciously when this thing starts. We have central banks on a gold buying spree, the most gold that they've bought ever in the last 2 years, 2,000 tons. I'm not even going to try to help you illustrate how much, but that's a lot of gold. That's how much whole countries have, like big player countries, China, Russia. We have the Federal Reserve. Yesterday, my inside source notified me that in the place where they stole, well, that was a Freudian slip possibly, in a place where they store most of the gold at 33 Liberty Street. I'm not talking about Fort Knox. Who knows what's in Fort Knox? Who knows where they're really storing the gold? Anyways, this inside source, who is very, very close to the situation with the DOD and what's going on, notified me that big purchase orders are being made for emergency provisions for those institutions. The central one in this case, there's many others, is the Federal Reserve and the Federal Reserve Bank. Okay, they are preparing for a major emergency. That's just, that's not even a, whatever. That's an afterthought. Because Germany is currently moving troops to the border of Russia. Yes, you heard right. They're moving their troops into the Baltic states towards Russia. Remember, Russia is still the big play. The big play is East versus West. Actually, the big play is China. But this Middle Eastern crisis, again, was fomented for decades and decades, and it came to the surface as a result of that separation between East and West. Keep that in mind. We have a massive attack on Lebanon recently that just happened a few hours ago, and that battle is intensifying. Anthony Blinken. Everybody's wondering, why is Anthony Blinken going to all these countries? Well, it just occurred to me today. He's going to all these countries to telegraph to them the shit that's about to go down. Okay? He's only visiting with our side of, each of these countries, obviously, because in many of these countries, he would probably be decapitated if he went and tried to negotiate with the other side. So I'm of the belief at this point in time that he is going around. Some people think that there's a rift between what the CIA is saying and what he's saying, and maybe he's not being told what the plan is, so he can appear more genuine and authentic, but the plan is really just a stalling tactic to amass a shitload of U.S. military equipment, the most naval vessels in that particular region ever before in history, even during the Iraq War. Okay, we never had this amount of ships. This is the tip of the spear, folks. They are planning something massive. The DEFCON activity is off the charts. I don't even pay attention to it anymore. I get messages every single half an hour, and if people actually knew my contact information and how to get a hold of me directly, I guarantee you my phone would just be blowing off the hook with anomalous activities and observations from all the OSINT guys, open source intelligence gatherers, who are constantly sending me information about heightened levels of NORAD, DEFCON-like activity, okay? We're without a doubt at DEFCON 3. And really, DEFCON 3 is the most important level, because once you go to DEFCON 2, it's hard to turn that ship around. You hope we stay at DEFCON 3. I mean, you hope we're never at DEFCON 3, but anyways, I digress. House Resolution 559 has passed. Precursor for attacking Iran. We can't let Iran have a nuclear weapon. Understand why Iran probably does want a nuclear weapon and why it's existential for them, and why, like I said at the beginning, this is a series of events that is culminated over many, many decades, and this is the end game. Because Iran knows that its existence ultimately will rely on its ability to defend itself and have that countervailing force that is a nuclear weapon to ensure that its interests within the region cannot be squelched by the Pax American agenda and the transatlantic alliance. Now we have a new resolution tabled, which is going to be a precedent for a war with Hezbollah. Senator Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal, the usual Warhawk suspects, planned, and it's too bad because I actually kind of liked Blumenthal before all of this, planned to introduce a non-binding resolution, doesn't really matter, warning Iran about facilitating a widening war with Hamas and Israel. Specifically, Graham said the following: the resolution will recommend the U.S. should militarily strike Iran if the Lebanon-based militant group Hezbollah opens up a second front against Israel in a substantial way. So, Hezbollah is faced with an existential crisis, because if you're Hezbollah right now, Israel is dropping heavy ordnance. They just got $300 million worth of bombs. That's not for Gaza. That's for Hezbollah, okay? And right now, the U.S., don't be fooled by this good cop, bad cop routine. Biden knows that a huge portion of his base right now is rooting for the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. That's why he has to pretend, okay? And he has to assuage their concerns and sensibilities about, the people in Gaza, and which I can totally sympathize with. But it's all for show. They all know what the plan is, and it's not about Gaza. This is Gaza is just unfortunately a pawn in the game, just like the Israelis are, okay? This is a much, much bigger thing. This is about who controls the oil and who controls the money. Remember that at all times. That's all it's about. Who controls the oil and the money, and who controls all that depends largely on what happens in those countries that surround the Saudi and the Emirate states, okay? Now, Iran has many cards that it can play. One of those cards that it can play is the Yemenis, and the Yemenis can light Saudi Arabia up like a Christmas tree if they want to, and this is the problem. You remember this image? Any guys old enough to remember this image right here? Remember the Kuwaiti oil fields burning? That's what Saddam did back in the day, and that's exactly what the U.S. fears most. We're going to talk about Iran's capabilities today, their military capabilities, and why the United States will never in a million years be able to conquer that country. They might drop 100 nuclear weapons on it, but they're never going to be able to conquer it. Nor the Israelis. Forget about it. What do they got? Like 300,000 guys and half of them are preoccupied? There's a reason why they're sending such a small force into Gaza right now. Apparently it's only like 30,000 troops that they're sending in there. The main issue, and I digressed, I told you, I'm going to be going on all kinds of ADHD tangents here. The main reason why they're keeping those troops out of there is because they're going for Lebanon. They're evacuating all the embassies in Lebanon. It turned red. Remember back weeks ago when I said, just watch, this square is going to turn red, level 4 travel advisory. 1 week later, it happened. They're planning to go to war with Hezbollah, okay? Now, Hezbollah is in a position where it has to either act preemptively or get annihilated faster. And because Iran, this is existential for Iran as well. If you don't think this is existential for Iran, ask yourself, why the hell are they putting all their military equipment in these deep, deep underground bases? This is absolutely existential. Iran knows, and they've attempted to undermine the Iranian government every which way from Sunday. And again, this is not good guys or bad guys. I don't think the Ayatollah are a bunch of good guys. You know, I am not a Russophile or a Sinophile or a Persiaphile, whatever. I'm just trying to give this to you objectively. It's very easy for people, you know, with small-minded people, they want to pigeonhole you and put a label on you and say, you're pro this, and if you don't think this, you're pro this, and you're anti that. Those people aren't thinking, okay? That this is, if you really want to, the essence of preparedness, guys, is your ability to be impartial to all this fucking tribalistic bullshit and just try to get a clear view of what's happening. So Hezbollah is in a position where if they don't act preemptively, like if they don't unload everything right now, there's a good chance they're going to get defeated anyways on a long enough timeline. It would be a long, gruesome war. And it's not just Hezbollah, Syria, Iraq, everybody factors into this. Yemen, it's the whole place goes up like a tinderbox. But Hezbollah, now that this resolution is probably going to pass, because, well, the other one, I think it passed like 229. So you got these hardline Zionist Democrats who are going to vote in that direction no matter what, it seems. So, and you got the Republicans who are going to vote. So it's very likely that this is going to pass, okay? Hezbollah and Israel have exchanged strikes along the Lebanon border since October 7th. Biden administration officials have sounded alarms about the possibility of the war expanding since the immediate aftermath of Hamas attack. We knew this was coming. So if Hezbollah does not act preemptively, they risk losing a lot more. And we're already seeing that. The attacks every single day this week have been ramping up. But because it's just these isolated incidents, it's just one thing after another. So what happened about a week ago? Let's go back in time. There were some skirmishes on the border. Hezbollah took out some radar installations on the border with Israel. Israel responded, killed some troops, took out some military bases, not big bases, but just, smaller targets. And then it escalated again. Yesterday, Israel, I believe it was Israel first, I could be wrong about this, they attacked some civilians, a woman and 3 daughters, I believe, killed, okay, so Hezbollah responds, kills one Israeli civilian. Now today, Israel responds and drops what appears to be a massive bomb. Probably some kind of J-down, but this was a massive explosion. This was in Lebanon, likely, I'm going to presume, we don't really see a secondary explosion, but I'm going to presume it was some sort of weapons depot just by the size of it, but that is a massive explosion. Okay, that is frickin' huge, unless it was some, Lebanese accident. There's always the possibility that when you're moving lots of military equipment around, shit can happen. Now, I was talking to a friend and he said that there is the risk of some, might as well leave this on here. There is the risk that, you remember what happened in Beirut, what was it, like 2020, the year that everything went wrong and the city blew up in Beirut? Well, some people suspect foul play with respect to that issue, but apparently there's a similar, I think it was ammonia storage in Israel that could potentially be a target, in the same way that that may have been a target. Of course, there's also sensitive nuclear facilities and numerous other factors like that. But the main point is, Hezbollah knows now that the U.S. intentions are, they have to know this, okay? All sides know this. Iran knows this. Everybody right now is getting their ducks in a row. Blinken's going around making sure that everybody knows what's about to happen. Well, not officially. He's going around doing the, okay, everything's going to be okay. And, even though William Burns is going and giving the real information to Netanyahu about what's about to start. And, I'm like 110% confident. I mean, look at this. You've never seen this amount of ships in the Middle East before, ever. Okay, and this is just the Mediterranean. So we know that they're planning something big. And of course, this definitely ties into Russia and Turkey and the Black Sea and the ongoing war in Ukraine, which is getting more intense by the day. So everything is lining up. We got Germany deploying tank battalions to the Russian border. Now, they're saying this is going to happen until 2025. This is going to be completed. This is a NATO joint forward presence battle group with 4,800 military personnel. Quite frankly, these guys will be eliminated probably in a hot second if a war ever broke out with Russia with a few tactical nukes, depending on how they disperse these troops. But remember, you can't, in the aftermath of a nuclear confrontation, what a lot of people think and forget about, and Joel Skousen made me aware of this once again. He's like, one of the main things people forget about is you have to have an occupying force to go in there afterwards. Otherwise, you don't want to start a nuclear war, because the elites know that people are going to survive a nuclear war. Billions of people are going to survive. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be all kinds of Mad Max madness. But people are going to survive. And you need an occupying army to go in there and neutralize the adversary. Otherwise, they're going to rebuild again, and they're just going to hit you again once you rebuild. Okay, so somebody has to win. And to win, you have to have an occupying force. And this is why you can't have a multipolar world. You're only in a permanent state of Cold War, which is why we're never going to have a two-state solution, which is why they never had a two-state solution here with the Native Americans or the Aboriginal, whatever PC version you go by in the States. It's different than Canada. Here it's Indigenous, Aboriginal, it's changing every day, First Nations. My head's going to spin at some point. There never was a two-state solution with the Aborigines in Australia. When apartheid fell in South Africa, one side just won and took over. Okay, that's just how it is. There can only be, it's just the nature of human beings and our tribalistic nature. We either destroy each other or somebody wins. So there will unfortunately be no two-state solution. Even if there was, it would be some underhanded way of neo-colonizing those territories in the West Bank. And geez, the West Bank is popping off today. Abbas, I can't even keep all these things in my head. He was attempted to be assassinated today. Things are heating up. Trucks are being blown up in the West Bank. There's gunfire being exchanged. They're dropping bombs in the West Bank. This is not just the Gaza Strip situation. This is the entire region getting ready to get lit up. And now you have this, which I knew about this almost a year ago, But now it's finally materialized because one of the last remaining treaties between Russia and NATO, the Conventional Forces Treaty, which limited the amount of troops each country could have near the borders, is expired. So there's no more nuclear treaties. There's no more conventional treaties. There's no more nuclear test ban treaties. Like, I just want to scream it from the top of the rooftops because there's still people out there. They're going to come on this video. They're going to push their glasses up. They're going to be like, nothing's going to happen. Oh, here he is again, predicting the end of the world. They're fucking emojis. Listen, you got to understand. Oh man, I'm going to have an aneurysm one of these days. These insipid, vacuous NPCs who just, it's like they just need everything told to them because that's how they're conditioned. And this is why I truly believe that the real population of the planet, and this is going to be maybe I don't want to be mistaken as like a eugenicist or something, or a Malthusian subscriber, but sometimes I think that the only reason why, like, and this is going to be this is one of these theories that could get misconstrued and used by some dictator to eradicate billions of people. So I'm not saying that I want that to happen, but I'm just saying that many people are only survive right now and are only alive right now because of technology is propping them up. They're like, it's like they have this permanent, technological incubator attached to them at all times, keeping them fed, keeping them going. As soon as the lights go out, these people are going to get erased. And that's just a sad fact of life, okay? And it's the same people right now who can't see all these obvious signs that are happening. Now, there's some people, they go too far in the one direction and they think, they've been just waiting for the end of the world and they got to fulfill some biblical prophecies and yada, yada, yada. Look, Revelations is an interesting read, but we got to remain objective, or you don't have to do what you want. There I go preaching again. Hezbollah cannot wait. The longer they wait and the longer Iran waits, well, the U.S. forces are continuing to accumulate in the region, which they obviously are. The only people who are fighting back right now are the crazy Houthis, the honey badgers of the Middle East, because they don't give a you-know-what. And they're now saying that if you continue to block missiles, they're saying this to the Saudis, if you continue to block our missiles, we are going to, that's not the one, I can't even keep track of all my Middle Eastern chaos. This is what we're going to do to you. We are going to light it up. They're going to light it up, and they're going to be able to do it. I'm starting to even suspect this whole Israeli shoot down with the arrow thing. I'm starting to think a lot of this is bluffs. Like a lot of this immortal missile defense propaganda, I'm starting to think that they want the other side to think that, to demoralize them so that they don't. And I don't think the other side's going to buy it. So it's very difficult to know right now just how effective that Iron Dome really is. When it comes down to it, especially when they're burning through it at a rapid rate. And that appears to be the strategy, is to run down the Iron Dome, because eventually that stuff needs maintenance. Now, the U.S. is sending in 2 more Iron Dome systems, which are going to bring the total to like 30 batteries or something like that. But, are they going to have the ammo? What's the spend rate going to be? When Hezbollah finally does start unloading these hundreds of thousands of missiles that they allegedly have, is that going to quickly overwhelm the system? Is Tel Aviv going to just devolve into chaos and Mad Max at that point? So many, many factors to consider here, okay? And of course, for Iran, this is existential because they know ultimately the end game. The JCPOA, I think that was all just a stalling tactic, and I think the Iranians know that now. I think the Iranians know that unless they get a nuke, their days are numbered. And I know there's a lot of people who think, right when Iran gets a nuke, they're going to act crazy because it's a part of their religious dictates, and they believe that, in order for them to succeed in the afterlife, the Persian Empire that's been around for thousands of years just built everything up to this one very point so they could destroy themselves. Sorry, I don't buy that bullshit. Okay, this is a lot more complicated. This is a game of them wanting to have that countervailing force of power within the region so that they can't be pushed around and can't have their interests pushed around. Now, I'm not saying that Iran's a good guy. The Ayatollah, not a good guy. Just like the Biden group is not good guys, okay? I personally believe that. But I think that at that level, power just corrupts people, okay? But it's about understanding it from their perspective. If they don't get a nuke, their days are numbered. And they've been preparing for this war for a long time. They've known it's about to happen. The United States knows it's about to happen. They've tried to bait them into it with Soleimani, with killing their nuclear scientists, with the Israelis striking Iran territory at some point, I think. Obviously, all the wars that have ensued between here and there. So they've been attempting to provoke the Iranians, but they haven't been ready. And maybe now they're finally either they're ready or they're not. And this is the situation. It's a game of chicken. It's a gambit, because if you don't act, it's like the nuclear thing, only without nuclear weapons. It's like if you don't do that preemptive strike, then the other guy could potentially do it, and then you stand to lose even more. So that's the situation we're in the Middle East, if that makes sense, as far as I can see it. You have the USA trying to do these recruitment drives right now. You have, allegedly, they're hiring for mass casualty events. And I don't know if that's a normal thing. That's why I didn't really report on it. But apparently, just these other little pieces of data. I'm getting messages every single day that are confirming everything that I'm telling you. And I can't even possibly communicate it all in a way to you which would be interesting to watch, because it would just be me reading stuff all day. So that's why I try to present it in the way I do, because it's important that people understand the gravity of the situation. Now, this doesn't mean you get in a panic and you go and annoy your family and your neighbors. That's not going to help. This means that you take it upon yourself as the person who is aware and perceptive of what's happening, and you prepare for it. And just understand that there's maybe some subtle ways that you can kind of move people in that direction, but if you try to force it on a person, they're just going to recoil and they're going to shut down and they're going to think you're crazy. So don't even, just let it unfold and maybe point a few things out. And then when those things happen, they'll be like, oh, they were right. Just like I was right when I predicted the pandemic back in 2014, 2015. I literally predicted every single thing that was about to happen. The lockdowns, the authoritarianism. I'll post a link in the description in the video. Thank me later. And then people will start to think, okay, maybe there's something to this, right? Australia, nationwide internet outage today. Again, who knows who they're going to blame this on? Again, they're probably not going to say that it was a cyber attack. And that's one of the things that always happens. You notice that? They'll never openly outright admit. They'll have to admit it in certain cases, like the what was that one attack where they got all the information of the U.S. federal agencies, the Sun attack, where they were able to tap into like hundreds of different government agencies and backdoor into all these programs. They had to disclose that one. But the ones like the pipeline exploding, the telecoms incidents, the airplane shutdowns, they're never going to admit to that stuff, because then it's an insurance thing and there's money involved. So they're never going to do that, all right? So in terms of the price of oil, people are wondering, well, what's the price of oil doing? Why is the price of oil not responding to all this shit that's going on in the Middle East? U.S. crude oil stocks are pretty low right now. Strategic oil reserve, half of what it was in 1980. Since that time, we've had numerous wars, okay, where the strategic oil reserve was still surprisingly filling up. But I think that this is just another massive head fake. The Saudis are clearly on board. The Saudis, a big part of the agenda here is to pit the Saudis against the Persians. That's what this is about. Pit the Saudis against the Persians through the Yemenis. The Yemenis are aligned with the Iranians, as far as I know. And the Iranians are going to say, hey, if you don't let us attack the Americans, because the Saudis are like, okay, I like this BRICS idea. We're pulling away from the Americans, but maybe they're getting cold feet, right? Now we want that missile defense. Maybe we hesitated. You know, we got all these projects we're working on, this bullshit 10-mile long line city contraption that's just going to be buried in the desert in 50 years that we're going to waste hundreds of billions of dollars on. We got to finish that, right? So they're thinking to themselves, you know, this is the moment of truth. This is where the Saudis have to decide which side they're going to take. Are they going to side with Israel or are they going to side with Iran? They're probably going to side with Israel. They already are. Okay, you already got American Stratotankers flying around there. They're getting air defense. They're going to, you know, it's just a big old game right now. But part of the factors of this oil slowdown is that, number one, people are stupid. Okay, that's the first one. And people don't see what's about to happen when all the signs are there. Every single possible sign that you would think would be there before a major war are there. But nobody cares. People think, oh, it's just going to be, you know, people are underestimating, discounting any sort of disruption that might arise from the Middle East right now. Economic slowdown is an obvious thing. Okay, people are running out of credit card debt. They're maxing out their cards right now. Warmer weather across the world. You know what? We might not even get a major winter this year. In Europe, this is 10 days out from now. I've shown you guys this calendar or this image on numerous occasions. It's red. Everywhere is red. Red, red, red. Red means above average temperature. If it's above average temperatures, people are using less gas. People are, they're using less gas. So the price of oil naturally goes down. The demand goes down. So that's one of the things that is offsetting this. You know, this warming trend could be what offsets some of the economic factors associated with a global conflict. I already said people are stupid. We got that one. Electric cars are kind of starting to have a dent, but even that energy has to come from somewhere. And then if but building more solar panels, well, that takes more oil in the short term anyways. So, you know, the strategic oil reserve is much lower. And like I said, you know, the market is completely oblivious to pending geopolitical risks. Now, something you need to think about, and just remember yesterday, because I got to emphasize this point, and guys, capitalize on that 20% off deal at Freeze Dry Wholesalers. Link is in the description. The same guys that are shopping there to protect the gold are also, preparing for war in the Middle East. So go figure. Anyways, we're not going to open that can of worms again today. But while I talk about this next bit, let's get the Iranian military parade on in the background here. Now, remember what happened in Afghanistan. There's some people who think they play a lot of video games, and the Israelis are finding out right now that it's not very easy to defeat a force in urban warfare like they're doing in Gaza. But just remember, the U.S. spent 20 years in Afghanistan, trillions of dollars, only to leave their adversary many orders of magnitude more powerful than when they came. Okay? Now, as I said, House Resolution 559, they're already going to war whenever they want. They can just make something up at this point because they have the House resolution to guarantee that. They have the conditions, but they have to act fast because global unrest is spreading. And maybe this is why, going back to that initial point I made in the video with Defense Minister of Israel, difficult decisions will have to be made. Now get a load of this. We couldn't win in Afghanistan. The Iranian population is 90 million people. Population in Afghanistan, 40 million. Population at the time of the invasion, I think it was like 28 million. The population of Afghanistan has exploded. Okay, it's just like been because all underdeveloped countries, they're having more kids, right? So, you know, and this is the stupidity of the political Zionists. If you want, because they're worried about the populations overpopulating, have an overrepresentation, and if they incorporate them all and they allow them to come into the fold in a one-state solution even, then they're worried that they're going to outnumber them and outvote them, okay? This is what you do. You help them develop. You get them to that point where all they want to do is play VR, dye their hair blue, and, just waste their lives and not have a family, okay? And just swipe right, left on Tinder all day. And there you did it. In a few generations, problem solved. They'd only be having maybe like on average 0.5 kids per 2 people. Problem solved. Instead, what do? They keep them in poverty. They keep them in a prison where all there is to do is have sex and have kids. This is the short-sightedness. I'm telling these guys, like, is it this hard to think outside of the box? Anyways, land mass. Iran is 3 times the size of Afghanistan. 3 times the size. And more treacherous terrain in a lot of places. The terrain is as mountainous and treacherous, if not more, than Afghanistan. Iran has a GDP of 400 billion. I think it topped out around close to $1 trillion at one point, which would have put them, and they were, I think, at one point in the G20, at least numerically speaking. They weren't ever accepted into that. But in terms of the top 20 countries, now that is under being one of the most sanctioned countries on earth. So imagine if you actually relieved this country of those sanctions at this point in time. I mean, Iran would be a powerhouse, okay? It would rival many top-tier European countries in terms of its capabilities, because now they're completely self-dependent. They've learned to do everything themselves. They're already decoupled from the world. And this is what happens when globalization fails. All those countries that you ostracized with sanctions for so long are now ahead of the game while you're trying to reindustrialize to catch up. Military, 610,000 active duty soldiers, 350,000 reserves, and the Besiege, I'm not sure if this includes the military, but this is under the auspices of what once was General Soleimani. 600,000 fighters and mobilize up to 11 million. This isn't, of course, counting, or this might actually include the militia groups that, are aligned with Iran all throughout the Middle East. Remember, the Taliban had 80,000 dudes. 80,000 dudes with AK-47s and a few anti-tank weapons and some IEDs. I'm sure they had some other stuff, but 80,000 guys drove that dog crazy. What is that old saying in Red Dawn? It only takes a few fleas to drive a dog crazy. Ain't that the truth? Now, yes, they're an asymmetrical war. Some people will reference Iraq and say, well, look, Saddam had a huge army. Yeah, the morale wasn't there, and there wasn't the training. And that was the biggest paper tiger in history. Okay, let's face it. That's why with those battles like Norfolk, it was completely like one-sided. Like it was, like shooting ducks in a barrel, right? Shooting fish in a barrel, mixing my metaphors. Sounded like Ricky from Trailer Park Boys up here lately with this COVID brain fog. Okay, and I'm feeling better, by the way. Thank you very much. Military equipment, 100 times more sophisticated than the Taliban. I mean, they got long-range missiles. They probably already have the means of deploying nuclear weapons. If they get the enrichment to the level that they need to build one, they probably, and you know what, the North Koreans are going to help them. I mean, why wouldn't the North Koreans help the Iranians? Why wouldn't the Russians at this point help the Iranians? Are Iranians going to pose an existential threat to the Russians? Not really. I mean, they would be a competitor in terms of oil. But at this point, that really doesn't matter because they're militarily aligned. So if the Russians, and because there's no more JCPOA, I mean, that's never going to happen. Forget about it. I'm talking about the Iranian nuclear deal. Never going to happen. The Iranians, maybe even the Pakistanis, will help out the Iranians get a nuclear weapon. They got cyber capabilities, which are fairly good. They have imaging satellites now. They have, like I said, nuclear deployment systems. They could likely make a nuclear weapon. They're one of the primary global leader in drone production. Self-sufficient military industry, like I said. They virtually have an unlimited amount of oil, and oil really is the basis of everything. If you have oil, you can almost do anything else, because if you have oil, you have money. And if you have money, you can do anything. If you have energy, you can do anything. You can grow food. If you have enough energy you could put enough money into a desert, you could grow food there if you have enough energy, okay? They have impenetrable mountain and underground military complexes, which would likely be impossible to defeat even with nuclear weapons. They have extensive militia networks in surrounding countries, so at the drop of a hat, they could cause widespread destabilization across the region, and that's what the Yemenis are partly there for. Not all of the Yemenis, just the Houthis, because they're going to start attacking the oil fields across these various countries. That's why they're all arming up, because they know what time it is. They have a extremely patriotic population. Now, there's been many attempts to undermine the Iranian government over the years with a lot of these protests that you're seeing. They've tried to do it with, they've had their own kind of George Floyd situation there, attempted by the West, and amplified by the West. But ultimately, this is a ancient empire, and there wasn't the disunion that you've seen and the corruption, I don't think, that you've seen in Saddam's Iraq beforehand. The Iranians have been isolated, whereas Saddam, they've been isolated for a long time now, whereas Saddam, it wasn't long after he was shaking Donald Rumsfeld's hand that they were invading and that they were at war with each other, right? So, he distanced himself from the adversary. In Iran has obvious history there with secularism and the Western imperial influence. But anyways, I'm not a historian, so I'm not going to pretend to be one. I'm just quite certain that the Iranian population is more patriotic. They're not going to just, buckle. They're not going to just fold. Okay, they have cultural unity. They have that cultural homogeneity. They, for good or bad, it is what it is. And they're also, of course, allied with Russia, China, and North Korea. So that's another factor that Saddam didn't necessarily have at his disposal at that point in time. And finally, the U.S.'s own simulation shows that they would lose a conventional war with Iran. And that one was run back in 2002, I believe, the Millennial Challenge exercise. And they lost that exercise, okay? They lost an exercise in 2002 when the U.S. had a more powerful military and the Iranians had a less powerful military. We arguably have a less powerful military at this point in time. Yeah, we got a lot of technology, but we're learning quite fast that technology requires maintenance. And in a long-term attritional war, you want the AK-47. You don't want the phaser gun, because the phaser gun is going to work amazing for a few weeks and it's going to break down, and then everybody's going to be back to sticks and stones. That's what I got for you guys today. I hope I've been able to communicate the gravity of the situation and make sense of this nebulous state of chaotic affairs, because this is it. It was written in the stars that this conflict had to happen. This has to be resolved. There has to be a winner. There has to be a winner. Because we cannot, as a species, coexist. We're way too tribalistic. People are just way too stupid to coexist peacefully. Which is why you have an occupying force of 50,000 troops in Japan. People think Japan is free. Japan ain't free. There's nothing Japan wants more than to get revenge on the United States. And the United States knows as soon as they leave, just watch what's going to happen. Things are going to change, okay? New alliances are going to be formed. Germany, still under occupation. 30,000 U.S. troops. Don't you forget it. That's the world we're living in. Just a continuation of World War II. And really calling them world wars with definitive start and end points is doing a disservice to the fact that this is a continuity of events. This is a stream of events that are all interconnected, and the war never really begins or ends. It just transmutes into a different form. Anyways, Gear up while you can, 20% off. Looks like my camera is about to overheat, so it's a great time to shut her down. Gear up, 20% off, freeze dry wholesale in the description below. That coupon is good for 1 week for the 20%. So capitalize on it while you can, guys. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.